Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Product in LA podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Cole, and this is an opportunity to shine the spotlight on some of the exceptional product leaders we have here as part of the LA product community. With us on this episode is Natalia Contreras-Brown. Really excited to have you here, Natalia.
Hey, Ethan. So glad to be here.
Going to be a very good episode today with a lot of fun stuff. But first, a word from our sponsors. Product in LA is brought to you by Uruit. That's uruit.com. They're a team of strategists, product managers, designers, developers that build digital solutions to wow customers and stakeholders alike. Formed in 2007, they're now a team of over 100 product enthusiasts that have delivered more than 150 products. To learn more about their services, please go to uru.com. That's uruit.com. Also brought to you by the Product Managers Association Los Angeles. This is LA's largest professional organization for product managers in tech. With over 2,500 members, they put on monthly events. The next one coming up is on October 27th at the Bouqs, of all places. And we'll talk to you a little bit about that with Natalia on enterprise product management. To find more about this, go to pma.la. That is pma.la. That's the Product Managers Association Los Angeles. As I mentioned, our guest this episode is Natalia. She's the SVP of Technology at the Bouqs, and some of her past roles have included VP of Product at the Bouqs, Head of Product Strategy at the Flex Company, Head of Product at Tastemade, and way back, she was a PM at Shoe Dazzle. And one interesting thing you may learn about Natalia by going to her LinkedIn page is it looks like she studied abroad in Lund, Sweden. And Natalia, I have to admit, I had to Google Lund to know exactly where it was. Looks like it was a great time.
Yeah, no, it's a small southern Sweden town, but I am of Scandinavian descent and I wanted to go visit Scandinavia. I spent many summers in Finland, and Sweden was the closest I could get through my university. But it was a good time.
That's terrific. So it was a bit of a homecoming.
Yeah.
That's awesome. As we talk to these product folks on Product LA, it is a tough field to come into, especially since there's no way to study. There's no classes specifically on product management. So everyone has their own journey. Natalia, really excited to learn more about your journey into product and how you found yourself here.
Definitely. Yeah. As you mentioned, there was no product management in college. I went to UC Santa Barbara, just up the coast from LA. And I studied business economics with an emphasis in accounting. I figured business was where I wanted to go, but as I was there, I actually worked for an interior design firm, and I realized
Okay.
that creativity was something I really wanted in my career. And so after graduating, I was like gung ho on interior design, which I know you're like, how do you go from interior design to product? But
Right.
I'll get
Right.
there. So I studied at UCLA Extension for like a year, learning more about interior design. And I thought, I'm going to get my master's in interior design and start my own business and all of these things. I was very entrepreneurial. Um, and I applied to a school in Italy, and it was a design school, and they kind of came back and said, you don't have enough technical experience yet, like the AutoCAD, all of those things. So you can either continue doing interior design like undergraduate for a year, or we have this business design program that might be interesting to you. And I had never heard of business design before. I hadn't even heard of design thinking. This was like 2010. So, it's
Okay.
still kind of a new theory. And I was like, this sounds kind of cool. It like marries like business principles and design principles. It's in Italy. It's a year program. Why not? I'm like 23. So I decided instead to pivot and go into a business design master's program, which was like an amazing year. I learned so much about design thinking. I worked with design companies in Milan.
Wow.
And while I was there, I talked to a friend of mine who was at an early startup, Shoe Dazzle, and we were just brainstorming how to like get more customers to the website, how to make the website better. She was a UX UI designer there. And after my year abroad, she's like, I think you should try to like join Shoe Dazzle. And I talked to I don't know what her title was. I don't even think it was like head of product at that point. She may have been the CMO or something. She's like, do you want to be a junior product manager? And I was like, sure. I'd never heard of it. I just knew that I wanted to do something where I could get my hands dirty with business and use creativity in business and kind of marry those things. And my school of product was Shoe Dazzle for the most part. And that's kind of how I got into it. And I loved it. And, I spent, Shoe Dazzle was then, merged with Just Fab. And I spent 7 years with that company, just kind of learning the ropes, both on the like front end and back end sides. And that's how I got into product.
How big was Shoe Dazzle when you joined? It sounds like it was still relatively small.
Oh yeah, it was. I think including like customer service and everything, I think there was like 50 of us at the time. So it was a great learning at that point. And I think, we'll get more into how product has evolved, but there was no marketing team. There wasn't really much of a merchandising team. And we're all kind of just figuring out the website. So I got to like I was thinking through everything from like what banners does the website need to like A/B testing, and it's like very infancy. So it was a lot of fun to kind of just get my hands dirty with a lot of different things.
And other aspects of that that carry on to your role today?
Oh yeah, I mean, so in general, I think that one of my favorite parts about product management and what I fell in love with is the ability to have so much influence over the experience. And so that I think is what continued my passion. So really um, solving customer problems and business problems. I think early on in my career, there was a lot of like, well, this is what we need to do, build the requirements and like launch it. But as it's kind of evolved, I've been able to continue to kind of look at the customer journey and listen to both the needs of the customer and the business and then marry those into solutioning. I think of myself as a problem solver, and with product, your problems are always evolving, and articulating the problem is half of the journey. And so I've really enjoyed doing that. And then now in product leadership, it's doing the same thing at a higher level, understanding the strategy of the teams. How do you make the most out of the resources you have, and continuing to just do the same thing at a larger scale.
Have you found parallels moving from and for folks who are listening, the Bouqs is a subscription floral service. Have you found similarities and differences in those two industries coming from shoes? And I guess there's a couple jumps in between
Yeah.
to ending in flowers.
Yeah, so I've been very lucky that, I started in e-commerce fast fashion, and which was also a subscription model. Taste made more of a media subscription model. I did a lot through there, and then the Flex company was CPG. So I've got to see different types of customers, and product plays different roles in a lot of those. But the process, I would say, is the connecting thread. So when I think about approaching any new problem, even at the Bouqs, it's who is my customer? I am a huge fan of the jobs to be done theory. So, what problem or what job are they hiring us to do? And so, in that sense, the process that I try to apply is the same, but
Hmm.
the problems that we uncover and how we solve those problems is what changes. So, in the case of shoes or most of the products before flowers, I was solving a problem for a customer who was purchasing a product for themselves most of the time. Whereas in flowers, a lot of the times you're buying for somebody else. And so thinking about the relationship between the purchaser and the recipient of the product is a little different. And that's really interesting to think about. And how do we stay top of mind for customers during those special occasions and special moments that they want to commemorate for these special people in their lives? And that's been really interesting to kind of figure out, because usually you're like, oh, it's your customer's birthday. What can we do for them? But now they might have 3, 4, 5 different recipients. They might all have birthdays. And how do you think about those relationships and talking to the customer in the most relevant way possible?
Wow, yeah, that is a unique challenge. So your end customers aren't even the ones that are interacting with your company. You're almost going through an intermediary.
Mm-hmm.
How do you approach that challenge?
Wow. So I think that talking to customers is one of my favorite things to do. I remember it's funny because I was just listening to a podcast and they talked about how, the demographics of King Charles and Ozzy Osbourne are like the same on paper, but they couldn't be more different. Um, that really stuck with me because I think that if you're just thinking high level about somebody purchasing flowers, the demographic is broad. But when you
Right.
start to really listen to customer stories around relationships, it really does help you understand the emotion that's tied to the product that you're selling. And for me, it's always about, creating a better life for my customer. And in this case, it's being able to show affection or sympathy or congratulations from far away. 2020 was a big year for the Bouqs in that sense too.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because you would think we have like male customers and female customers, and I'm going to put them in like various stereotypical buckets. But a male customer doesn't care as much about what the flowers look like, as long as they're getting across to the person they love that they care. Like, I had a customer I talked to say, "I have one for my mom. I have a subscription for my mom and for my grandma and for my girlfriend, and it gives me a monthly subscription where I send them flowers and then they call me, and then we can maintain a relationship that way. So I don't have to like remember to call them, but they know that I love them and it maintains a relationship. So it's very like um, eh, convenient. Whereas with our female customers, it's very much like I am deeply thinking about this person and I want to be very thoughtful about the flowers I send. And it might be a different person every month. So it's kind of fun to think about the psychology of giving.
That's funny. I'm thinking my own life as I give out flowers. I generally know what colors I'm interested in, but like that kind of gets to maybe the most of the extent of maybe a flower or two that I know to go to or avoid. But I'm not certainly not getting too much into the weeds of exactly how it looks. And so I
Yeah.
think definitely help fill your stereotype for that.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of um, identifying, you know, what the like I guess what is the most surprising thing that has come up from your work in this space? Is clearly, I imagine that Mother's Day is probably a big day for you guys, Valentine's Day. Are there big surprises, even if it's like a specific day or just a use case that you wouldn't typically have thought of as you're entering the role, and then you come into this space and you're like, oh my gosh, like, no, this is a real thing. I had no idea.
Yeah. So a couple things. I think one, it is fascinating how little time between Valentine's Day or Mother's Day and the purchasers did like deciding to purchase. So everybody knows Valentine's Day is February 14th every single year.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how early we message. You're not really getting anybody buying like sooner than a week before. And the psychology, this is like just a fun fact, the psychology between the Super Bowl and Valentine's Day, because the Super Bowl's was except for last year and this year, unfortunately, the Super Bowl is like the end of January, very beginning of February. Last year, Valentine's Day was the Monday after Super Bowl Sunday. And I'm like convinced that there's a psychology that like men aren't thinking about Valentine's Day until after the Super Bowl, which is like has posed some challenges in how we get people to think about buying early. So that's kind of an interesting thing. No matter like how much we want to remind people. It's like back of mind until like specific tentpole things. And like last year, Mother's Day was early in May. No matter how much we message in April, Mother's Day is coming. Until you get to May 1st, nobody's thinking about Mother's Day. And so that psychology has been really interesting. Um, on the other side of it, our flowers, a lot of our stuff, like all of our flowers are sourced directly from farms. And I mean, most flowers, I think I don't want to get this wrong, but most roses in the United States come directly from Ecuador. And so on the flip side of like Ecuador and Colombia are where most of our flowers come from, like sustainably sourced farms in South America. And the process of getting flowers through like well the process of getting flowers at all is the most high tech complex system I've ever like seen.
Okay.
And that like just the growing seasons are really specific, and then just the cutting and bunching of flowers and the machines that they use to like do this. The amount of flowers that come through Miami to the United States from South America is incredible. And so on my side, figuring out the supply chain products and like enterprise products we need in order to ensure that customers are getting flowers that are fresh has been another fascinating surprise for me.
Oh, especially lately. So that's really interesting. So has have the supply chain issues of the last year impacted the technology? Like, are you find yourself having to set like maybe notifications or warnings on the site saying, "Hey, this may or may not get there on
So
time"? Like, has the supply chain impacted the technology?
yeah. So in general, we have it down to a science now. The Bouqs will be 10 years old this year, so we've been around and we've seen a lot.
Yeah.
But weather, like we just had Hurricane Ian go through Florida, and so when things like that happen, I mean, our system allows our supply chain team to send orders to the farm slightly earlier, so we can like potentially miss a hurricane. Like last week, we ended up delivering products like a day earlier than we originally like people booked to be delivered just so we wouldn't hit the hurricane. 2
Yeah.
Valentine's Day ago, there was a huge freeze and the entire like Texas was like frozen. So those types of things definitely affect us, and our systems have to be flexible enough in order to allow the supply chain team to make those like on the fly decisions. And we have like multi-sourcing for how we fulfill. So we might have to say, okay, you know what? We can't fulfill from our Memphis facility. We're going to have to move to another facility, our Chicago facility, for example. And so our systems have to be flexible enough for the supply chain team to react quickly during freak weather events.
Yeah, and then the messaging that goes out to the customers, I imagine, is that has to be flexible as well. You have to be
Oh
able
yeah,
to
definitely. Yeah.
give them
So
the heads up.
yep. Yeah. So we proactively, all that information has to go to our customer service team. And we also put it on the website where we kind of keep our customers up to date because the flower industry, it's hyper perishable. It's a little different than shoes or yoga pants or things like that.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
And like kind of looking forward, how do you see the technology changing maybe in a world where folks are paying a little bit more attention to supply chains? I think, wasn't a thing that people spoke about on a weekly basis or on a casual basis 2, 3 years ago, but it seems to be a recurring theme. Even post COVID, it just seems to keep cropping up as a challenge. Do you see like where do you see for the future of I guess product management and its and the supply chain impact on product management, or not?
Yeah.
Is this fleeting?
I don't think it's fleeting at all. I think that regardless of supply chain problems, the demand for instantaneous delivery, thanks to companies like Instacart and DoorDash, is really kind of forcing us to think about fulfillment completely differently. And so, regardless of like the large supply chain in like problems we've had, there's a lot of opportunity that it was uncovered by that. And I mean, it's one of my favorite things to think about even at the Bouqs. Another thing that's interesting about flowers is we're not delivering, like if you think about Amazon can tell you, okay, it'll be there in 2 days or it'll be there in 3 days. But you
Right.
can't order something on Amazon and be like, send it on this specific day for my wife's birthday. And that's what our supply chain has to do. And so I think about the layers that go into our calculations behind lead days to get it from the farm to to FedEx to the customer, and then calculating a delivery date based off of that. And that's really the platform that we have and we're continuing to build on. But that's only scratching the surface because eventually you want to like look at things like sell through to decide where to fulfill from. So if you have to diversify your supply chain in order to be closer to the customer, then you need to be able to route orders in an efficient way. Currently, you have one or traditionally, really, you have like 1, 2 DCs or distribution centers that fulfill all your orders, and they get there in 2 to 3 days. If the customer is expecting it in 15 minutes, then you have to get a lot more crafty about how you're routing orders, how you're supplying your distribution centers effectively in order to keep costs down and customers happy. And so that, I think, from a product perspective, is super interesting.
Yes, it's a more sophisticated, more demanding customer base. I can
Mhm.
just think back to, I don't know why this is the one that comes to mind, but cereal boxes. If you sent away for something on a cereal box as a kid growing up, it would always say coming to you in like 2 to 6 weeks.
Mhm.
These days, it seems like we're just becoming accustomed to knowing on demand when it will be here, which I guess presents another challenge to folks in the supply business, where if it misses that tight window,
Mhm.
um, it can present real challenges. Are there things that you guys have worked on, or something that's exciting that you've built out to help, I guess, keep folks up to date when the package doesn't make it on time? And I guess specifically for you guys, if you miss, the birthday or the anniversary, it's a big deal. If I don't get my new microphone, this today versus tomorrow, I might be peed, but it won't change relationships.
Yeah.
How does that factor into, your work with the technology?
Yeah, definitely. So, um, there's a couple steps, right? If it's going to be late by like, and this is generalization, but by a certain number of days where it won't get there at all, or that specific package won't get there at all, then we want to be flexible enough to be able to fulfill that same product from a different location more quickly, right? So we have the way ours are set up is we have farms and we have distribution centers, and our distribution centers are closer to the customer so we can get products there faster. So there's a world where you might say, okay, these roses aren't going to make it from Ecuador on time. We have roses at the DC, send them a second package, make sure that one's on time, and then they have two.
Mm.
um, of course, there's times currently where we won't be able to do that. And we have to just be proactive about getting to like telling the customer that it's either going to be late or and discounting as possible. We have started now to dip our toe into retail and owned and operated retail. Our first retail store opened here in LA at the Alfred location on Robertson. And it's been a big learning experience for everybody at the Bouqs, but especially the product team as we think about how might retail stores play into ensuring customer satisfaction despite supply chain issues. So we're not sure how we're gonna do it yet, but like that's kind of the thought process, is layering on backup plans. I think retail also will allow us to like help with same day delivery a lot easier.
Oh, that's exciting. So, and
Mm.
it brings another layer to it, for especially from the product team, where you're trying to identify, the customer experience. Now there's actual people who will be participating in it rather than simply technology. So,
Yeah.
um, fun challenges,
Mhm.
but sounds like there's a good challenges, and then you guys are on a terrific
Yeah.
terrific track right now. It's exciting.
So yeah, it's been great. It's been a lot of fun, and I can't wait to see what we do next.
Terrific. We're coming up to the time here. Um, as always, this is LA, product in LA. We try to keep it based in LA. I know you're a native Angelino, so sometimes this question's a little harder. It's a little easier for us transplants. But what is the most LA thing that's happened to you? And it can be product related. It doesn't have to be. But curious to hear what's your story.
Yeah. So I mean, this was a tough question, like you mentioned, being from here, LA. LA things don't seem so LA to me. However, I guess my first product job was at Shoe Dazzle. And for those of you who know Shoe Dazzle, back in 2010, 2011, Kim Kardashian was the spokesperson. And so I was on and I was wearing many hats. So I got to like sit in on photo shoots with Kim Kardashian. And, we also would have other celebrities come in later. Shoe Dazzle had Rachel Zoe as the like lead face of Shoe Dazzle. And so I've been able to kind of brush shoulders with celebrities throughout my time in product, and I guess that would probably only happen in LA versus Silicon Valley.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, or anywhere. Yeah, running
Yeah,
into Kim Kardashian on your day job, watching
yeah,
her at a photo shoot.
yeah, exactly.
That's terrific. That's a great note to end on. Thank you again. Our guest is Natalia Contreras-Brown, and the company is the Bouqs. Thank you so much, Natalia.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
It's been really fun. This is a great one. I'd also like to thank our sponsors. That's PMA-LA at pma.la and Uruit, URUIT at uruit.com. Thank you again to everyone for listening to us, and we'll see you next time on Product in LA.